Okay, so for number 6, if it says is it direct, inverse, or neither, we have to remember that for direct variation it's y equals ax, and that the constant is found by rearranging to get y over x. Inverse, it's y equals a over x. Just make sure x is in the denominator. Just because you see a fraction doesn't mean it's inverse. And to isolate a, you would multiply both sides by x, right? And then you would get a equals yx. So as we go through the first 3 in number 6, you need to isolate y first. So if you isolate y by dividing by x, you get 7 over x. And since x is in the denominator, then it's an inverse. For the next one, because of the plus 3, it's neither. And then for the last one, you need to isolate y. Y is isolated, so it's direct. When you look at a table or some data, it's sometimes kind of confusing. Is it direct or inverse? So what I like to do is I like to create a chart, and I remind myself what the equations are for direct and inverse. And then second, I always isolate a. And as you go through the chart, for example, I always first ask myself if when I multiply x and y, are those a values the same? And if they are, it would be inverse. So I went through the table and I looked at the ordered pair. And I multiplied 1 times 2, and that was 2. Then I multiplied 2 times 4, and that was 8. Now, none of them were the same number. These a values weren't the same, so it couldn't be inverse. I then went through the table and did y over x. Make sure it's y over x. So 2 over 1 was 2. Next ordered pair, 4 over 2 was 2. And last ordered pair, or next was 6 over 3, that's 2. Since all of the a's were the same, it was 2. It would be an example of direct. So the equation would be y equals 2x, since all of the a's were 2. So for number 7, it first tells us that it's an inverse equation. There's 4 parts. So first, set up the general equation. So for inverse, it's y equals a over x. Then next, we need to use the given values to write an equation to find the constant. Always use the 2 numbers that are side by side. So sometimes it comes next in the sentence, sometimes it's written on the line below. So we're going to plug these in for x and y because they're side by side. So when we do that, we plugged 4 in for x and 3 in for y. To get rid of denominator, you multiply both sides by 4. So that's how we got a is 12. That's part 2. Part 3, you make an equation. In equation, you should see y and x. A lot of people mess up this step. They skip it. Equation, you want to see y and x. So it's y equals a over x, and we insert the 12. So that's our equation. Then part 4 is when it says, finally, find what a value is when you've got something else. Find y when x is 3. You plug 3 into your equation to find the y value. And when you simplify, you get 4. So remember, there's 4 parts. Now for this last one, joint, part 1 is the equation is z equals axy. Part 2, we plug in what they give you. I forgot to write in here that we need to insert these values. That should have come in the next sentence. So for z, I plugged in 16. For x, I plugged in 4. And for y, I plugged in 2. So 4 times 2 gets us 8. So we have 8a. We divide by 8, and we get a is 2. So that's part 2. Part 3, we write an equation. When you have an equation, you want variables, not only numbers. So we have z equals, we inserted that a value we just found, a value of 2. So z equals 2xy. That's an equation. You have to have that. And then the last part is they want us to plug in the number 5 for y and negative 4 for x and simplify to find z. So when we do that, we get negative 8 times 5, we get z is negative 40.